everybody, my name is Melissa Furness and I'm here to do another demo for you, art demo. What I've got here is a group of sketchbooks that I've been producing since I was very young, starting in about 1989 actually. And this pile over here is my sort of young girl phase where I was making lovely images up to probably undergrad. And then over here what I have is a set of books that I've been working on since then, since I've been starting teaching and working with students. And what I do is I teach students how to make their own handmade books. So, you know, just for a little bit of fun, I thought I would take you through looking at some of my old school sketchbooks. So I think we'll have a little bit of show and tell here. Little kind of mini stool is quite handy when painting as well as showing people things. What I have here are my old sketchbooks from way back in the day. You can see I had a little liking for this particular type of sketchbook when I was a teenager. I think 1989 I would have been, yes. Hey everybody, so this is back in 1989 when I wanted to be a fashion designer. Look at these amazing clothes. I even had my own little label that I designed called Groove. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of where I've come from and how far I've come since then. I thought, you know, students and others might be interested to see how cheesy I was back in the day. Haha. And here's some life drawing of portraits out of my head, which are okay, you know, and a horse. Yay. Switch to 1990 now. A few more portraits. I was really interested in, you know, drawing people. I was trying to draw out of my head, but as you can see, when you do that, things get very stylized. So eventually I learned better. And then back to some more fashions. Actually, when I was in high school, I was the biggest nerd. I even made some of these clothes. I made my own patterns out of newspapers and made them and actually wore them to school. So you can see what my interests were at the age of whatever that was in 1989. Ooh, even swimsuits. We're on to the next sketchbook. Here you have my more refined logo of my fashions called Dare. In 1990, here we have people actually wearing my fashions. Spring and summer collection here. Very 1980s, early 90s, I guess, here at this point. Some more portraits. I was trying to do women, and then I think later I tried to do men as well, a little bit unsuccessfully. Here we have some design work, and then fashion. And playing around with a couple things like text. Look at that movie star. Who is that? Guess it, guess it. Charlie Sheen, I think. This guy, another famous movie star, was in some kind of version of Star Trek. I can't remember his name. Wes, I think, something. Ooh, Debbie Gibson. Yay! One of the New Kids on the Block, guys. New Kids on the Block. Very cool. And then I think after a while I switched to fashion magazines and drawing them, and then a random clown. There's another movie star, what's his name? He was in the Princess Bride, the little kid in the Princess Bride. And then here's more sort of me learning from fashion magazines how to draw, and then something out of my head. You can see the difference, how when you don't have something to reference, that it becomes quite stylized. And more kind of fashion models. Oh, and he's famous too. He was on that really silly, cheesy teen sitcom. Okay, hey guys, we've moved on to 1992. Look, I'm getting a little better with my drawing. Woohoo! Oh, baby. And look, it seems that I'm titling them as well, which is sort of interesting. This is one out of my head versus ones that I see from life. This was one I liked quite a lot. I think I even did a larger version of it. A few more images from fashion magazines. That one's definitely out of my head. Oh my gosh, elongated arms. Head. Some other dudes from some fashion magazines, or maybe you know them. Getting kind of long here, so I'm just gonna start to flip through them for y'all and give you an idea of the array of loveliness going on in my sketchbooks when I was young. Some of them obviously are better than others. Strange designs. River Phoenix. And then there's that one. Now we're moving on to 1995. A little bit more advanced. I think, yeah, this would be like my first year of undergrad, when I didn't have that many classes, drawing classes, so I was trying to keep myself in doing art while I was still studying statistics and biology, which I thought was really boring, unfortunately. So I drew my shoe and flowers and designed some t-shirts and weird posters. Oh, this is 2D design, folks. For those of you that are my students. 2D design, loveliness. And some of these turned into collages, and then this strange stylized human man that I managed to keep drawing. My hand, my feet, that guy again. A mural. I did a mural somewhere in some place in Iowa. If anyone ever sees it, it's there. And then I started getting these ideas for strange formed paintings. This is, I think, maybe like my first painting class ideas. And then a cow because I'm from Iowa. Woohoo. Ooh. I think I still have that somewhere. I did. And then this is like my cousin who wouldn't sit still. My grandpa. Here's family members. Looks like it must have been holiday vacation. My brother. My dad. Everyone's watching TV. They must be watching football or something. Some friends we had over. Oh, playing cards. That's a big pastime in Iowa. Somebody else reading. Oh, and there's a self-portrait. There's me. Woo. And some more friends sitting around. So eventually I graduated to, instead of drawing out of my head, drawing other people. Ooh, soap. Soap's a big deal right now. Stay clean, folks. Wash your hands. And then Degas. After Degas, a couple of these. And then another self-portrait. So this is 1997. This is my first time leaving the United States. Actually, my first time leaving the country, actually flying on a plane. And I filled up 2 sketchbooks over the course of 5 months of pretty much everything around me that I saw. This one is actually London. So I was in Florence for 3 months and London for 2. The washing machine, I had to go and get my clothes washed, and that was when the Spice Girls were really big. So Spice Girls were everywhere. And I don't know, I have a little sort of nostalgia for the Spice Girls, and even now. Here's all sorts of things. We obviously did a lot of Hangman on the train, and different drawings of places that I visited. And very expressive. When I got back from London, I ended up using these images to create my senior thesis exhibition for undergrad, which some of you know, might relate to. A lot of text here, images of friends of mine, things I saw at the beach. So this is kind of the start of when I utilized travel as real inspiration for my work, and these sketchbooks that I would keep while I was traveling. This is the very, very first one, so exciting. And then from there, I ended up doing a lot of artist residencies on my own and even teaching my own study abroad program, which I'll show you some sketchbooks from as well. My other study abroad sketchbook from 1997, my first trip abroad, like I was saying. And so, you know, I'm just researching what I see, but also sometimes spending a little bit more time looking at things and studying them more closely. My first time seeing a palm tree, actually, being from Iowa, as I was. This is Sienna. Images of different people I saw on the bus, on the train, people I knew. So this gives you an idea of some of the things I saw. It was a lot of fun, great trip. Really inspired me to begin on the track that I'm actually on now with my work. Venice, as you can see there. I made a lithograph of that later on. And that's a good view of those works. Following my trip, those are a few plans of works that I did for my thesis show, and then some other things I did for different classes. A lot of like life drawing, figure drawing, plans for different paintings that may or may not have occurred. There's that, you can sort of see it. But at least you get an idea of what some of them look like. Oh, I was doing like, that's Bill Clinton there. I was doing caricatures for a little while from some of my friends and some of the people that you might know as well. Heads and potatoes, heads. There's me. More heads and potatoes. Another self-portrait. Self-portraits always look angry, don't they? Figure drawings, studies of different parts of the face. And a big nose, and maybe that's a good place to end. Okay, so these are some books that I've made with students. I do a lot of different types of books. These are soft-bound books with different types of stitching, pamphlet stitch, multiple signature stitching. Those are just a little bit of a view of what some of those look like. I teach screen printing as well, and so we take one of these books and like chop up one of our screen prints and turn it into a little book, which is more like a visual kind of abstraction. And then this is an example of a book that I made with students very recently. A handmade hardbound book that we used when we went to Italy. We did a monotype screen print of the front cover, and then just made our own sketchbook. This one is brand new, which I'm going to be starting this spring, and I'll fill it up. But later on I'll be showing you how to make a book that's very similar to this. So you see, we put a little bit of book cloth on the foredge to help protect the corners, because often I am wandering around putting this in and out of my sketchbook, drawing on site. So it's important to protect those edges to try to keep your book looking nice. So that's what this pile is other books that I've made in past years with other students traveling around. So I'm just going to show you a view of some of these. So like this one is nice because I do a lot of screen printing, and I actually collage different bits of the screen print on top of the cover. So this is a book that I filled out when I was on a residency in Ireland. So this gives you an idea of kind of what my travel books look like. This is Swansea, Wales, which is where I had an exhibition before I arrived in Ireland, which is really an amazing place. I met a fantastic group of artists. And then this was in Ireland when I arrived. So I was keeping notes, you know, drawing some things that I saw on site. It's a beautiful green place. And also planning out ideas that I had for works that I was going to produce while I was there. I also like these overlay images, getting some transparency, and then you can add something else to the piece. And this started my fascination with stones, moss patterns, I ended up taking drawings and actually burying them in the ground when I was there. So this sketchbook was a lot of fun to play around with. There was a lot to see. Pattern that I ended up putting into the work at one point. And then this is a mapping of where I buried those individual drawings on site. Rubbing and different things that I was drawing when I was there. Here's a view of some of my favorite sort of travel materials that I like to utilize when I'm out and about or abroad or somewhere sketching. First thing you have is the paintbrushes, and paintbrushes can be used in multiple ways. I like to use water-soluble pencils, colored pencils, and also water-soluble graphite. So brushes are used for that, but then I also love to use gouache. Holbein gouache, I would say, is my definite favorite. It's got the most intense pigment content. They are a little bit more pricey, and these are the types of oil paints that I use as well, but I would say very much worth the cost. It's a Japanese color, very nice pigment content, very beautiful color. So I'll use gouache if I don't have like a water-soluble colored pencil to utilize. But when I do, which is really handy, because when I'm not near my home, I'll use water-soluble pencils because I always have a water bottle with me, and I can create a painting without having actual paints and a palette with me. So as you can see over here is a travel palette that I often use too when I'm dealing with gouache when I'm out. So my favorite water-soluble colored pencil are these Derwent Inktense pencils. Again, a little bit more expensive, but that is because of the high pigment content in these pencils. So what you get is a really nice vivid color. When you add the water to the paint, it doesn't get watered down too much. It doesn't get too pastelish looking. I really like vivid, strong color. So I carry these around pretty much all the time. If I'm not able to have those, then the tried and true is certainly Prismacolor colored pencils. Again, very vivid color that you can get from those. So I might use a combination of Prismacolor pencils and the gouache to get a similar kind of effect. What we have on the end too are my favorite graphite pencils. I tend to use ones that have a stronger sort of blackness, the B, 4B, up to 9B, and also a pencil called an ebony pencil, which means they're greasier, I would say, and they would create a stronger mark. So that's how I tend to build up my work. I also use these woodless pencils as well. This is a 9B woodless pencil. And then these are water-soluble graphite pencils. This is a bit more of a medium, but this will create a watercolor-like effect that the gouache or the water-soluble colored pencils will do. The other item that I often use are these Copic pens. Those are a lot of fun to draw with as well. They come in different thicknesses. Some of them are very wide in terms of the tip of it, a little bit more like a brush. And then others are very thin, very narrow to create a fine line, as you can see with this one. The other thing that I bring with me is a miniature ruler. It's very handy as well if you want to create more straight lines, particularly if you're drawing with architecture. And the type of pencil eraser that I use are these white vinyl erasers. I get really frustrated with those kneaded erasers because they don't keep their form, and I tend to like to be a little bit more aggressive with my mark making. And so I really dig into the sketchbook itself, and then these vinyl erasers will allow me to do that to create a nice expressive mark. With paintbrushes, I utilize synthetic whites most of the time. They're soft, they're quite inexpensive. Will allow me to create a nice smooth mark with my paintbrush without being too expensive, because sometimes I'll end up leaving them in water overnight or a couple days, and then it could end up getting destroyed, and then I don't have to feel so bad if I've spent a huge amount of money on some like animal hair brush, which I don't generally tend to buy. These work really nicely for me. Then I can just replenish my supply if something happens to the brush. This book is from Italy. These are images of things that I was showing students how to draw, working on location in Florence. I also did a side project of bread, where I stole bread from the table and printed it. And then these are other things that were from on-site when I was in Italy. Using the overlay, looking at patterns and things that I saw, rubbings. And when I'm teaching study abroad, I also teach a little bit of printmaking. So this is some dry point and a study for that piece. Anatomical waxes in the History Museum there, and a bit of perspective drawing. This is another example of a piece that I did in Italy with students, where we were drawing on site, and then I'd fill things out, you know, after class as well, doing different rubbings. We do stenciling. Here's a drawing that I then turned into a lino cut, 2-color lino cut. Here's some variations of that. Gelatin monotype. And then just playing around with, you know, observations of things that I was seeing on a daily basis. There's one by my daughter, age 5, monotype, and different drawings. This is from Bobley Gardens, rubbings, things on the train, a little bit of a dry point, and the market as well. Pinocchio is obviously very big in Florence, and different statues that you would see there. So each time I go and travel, I fill out pretty much an entire sketchbook with no problem. When I'm at home, I don't know, it's not the same. You know, I'll fill out something that is maybe more project-based, but it's a little bit more difficult for me to fill it up than it is when I'm observing things when I travel. It's a little bit less pressure, I suppose, to make something in the sketchbook. So that's Italy for you. So this was one last sketchbook of Italy that then transformed into a body of work that I produced actually very recently at K Contemporary in Denver. So this is just me in Italy studying things, and then when I returned, you let things rumble around in your head, and then you come up with different ideas, and then my perceptions of Italy became this exhibition that I then produced, which was based off the idea of a dolmen, which also comes from my Ireland sketchbook. It's a stone table here. And so I took the paintings that I was doing and transformed them into these structures. So they can be seen as individual paintings, but then they also are viewed as a kind of dolmen. And I was thinking about the history of painting and the history of like Western painting and how incorrect it can be, like how painting in the West, makes such claims to being the birth of oil painting, for instance, and a lot of other things. So that sketchbook then turned into this other one that I fully developed with just, the ideas from this exhibition. Some drawings that then became a screen print, and then plans for the different structures of the dolmens. And after I finished the paintings, I printed some of them out so you can get an idea of some of the thoughts that I had. And I did an artist talk with this as well. And you can see, how I was planning different elements of it. Filling out this sketchbook was a bit of fun. Sketchbooks for me are project-based or travel-based, and sometimes the two come together to create a culmination of a larger body of work. So I find that sketchbooks are very important to my creative practice and my creative process. And I encourage you to explore the possibilities of what your sketchbooks can do for you. Think about different types of materials that would be beneficial for you to use, for you to try out. Hopefully I've inspired you to get to work and start drawing. Thank you everyone for joining me today for this discussion of sketchbooks and what they can do to help your creative practice. I look forward to seeing you again in my next demo, or you can take a look at my work on my website, melissafurness.com, or follow me on Instagram. Good luck in your future sketchbook drawings, and thank you again.